All right, I'm back. Everybody settle down. I know I was a little angry last show. I've calmed down. I think I had good reason to be angry, though. I think you understood. I think a lot of you were angry right along with me. I'm not as angry, and I had intended on not doing another Afghanistan show, but how can I not? How can I not talk a little bit about Afghanistan after listening to Joe Biden's comments after the last military plane left Afghanistan? How can I not mention some important information that you must know? Welcome to the Comparison Group. Thanks for joining me. Follow me on Twitter at comparison_show, at comparison_show. Go to the website for additional shows, fact checks, and sources. www.thecomparisongroup.com. www.thecomparisongroup.com. So I'm going to try and keep my comments about Afghanistan short because I think I would just be going over the same territory, the same information over and over again in a different way. And I don't want to do that. I know people are going to have their minds made up on how they feel about Afghanistan, and that's fine. As I say, I'm never here to change anyone's mind, but I do want to just cover a couple of things that I think are important and that, for my own sake, the things that frustrate me most that I want to be sure I'm clear about. I never felt the United States of America should stay in Afghanistan indefinitely. If anything, maybe I played a little devil's advocate asking the question, why couldn't we stay indefinitely if we wanted to? And there are some people who are saying, yeah, we could have stayed at Bagram Air Base. There's no reason we couldn't have kept a small force at Bagram Air Base. And I don't know. I suggest that maybe it's possible that we could have and we should have. There are people who Monday morning quarterback and say Joe Biden should have evacuated people from Bagram Air Base as opposed to an airport in the middle of a city. I don't know. Maybe there was a reason his military advisors told him Bagram would not be good for evacuations. Maybe they felt Bagram was more susceptible to missile attacks of planes taking off. Who knows? I'm not looking to go over that discussion over and over again, second guessing and what if and why not. What I'm concerned about is Joe Biden becoming just another president who says what he needs to say in the moment to get him through a bad spot politically. I like Joe Biden. I voted for Joe Biden. I'm not ashamed to say that. But when Joe Biden stands in front of a microphone and says over and over and over again, we had to get out of Afghanistan when we did because of the deal made by his predecessor, made by Donald Trump, it's just not honest. Not only is it not honest, but Joe Biden and Democrats and people on the left seem to want to insist on having an argument that no one is having with them. They seem to want to have a fight and answer criticism that isn't being directed at them. Very few people are criticizing Joe Biden for his decision to leave Afghanistan. Everyone is on board with that. Just about everyone agrees that we needed to end the war in Afghanistan and get out of Afghanistan. That's the argument Joe Biden wants to have. He keeps wanting to answer that question. Why do we have to leave Afghanistan? We had to leave Afghanistan. Why do we have to leave Afghanistan? No one's asking that, Joe. No one's asking that. Everyone is asking, why did you have to leave Afghanistan the way you did? Why was the exit so chaotic? Why did the exit seem to be so unplanned? That's what people are asking. And if you listen to Joe Biden's remarks, he isn't answering that criticism. But I hear the media on the left saying Joe Biden answered his critics today. I heard Lawrence O'Donnell, after Joe Biden gave his remarks, when the last plane had officially left Afghanistan, Lawrence O'Donnell from MSNBC, host on MSNBC, said that was the most honest speech I've ever heard a president give. I heard Rachel Maddow that same night call people who were still criticizing Joe Biden the peanut gallery. Here's just a little bit of what Biden said.
The previous administration's agreement said that if we stuck to the May 1st deadline that they had signed on to leave by, the Taliban wouldn't attack any American forces. But if we stayed, all bets were off. So we were left with a simple decision. Either follow through on the commitment made by the last administration and leave Afghanistan, or say we weren't leaving and commit another tens of thousands more troops going back to war. That was the choice, the real choice, between leaving or escalating.
That's just not true. It just plainly is not true. There was no commitment that you had to escalate and send in tens of thousands of troops. And there was a third option to tear up the Trump deal and negotiate your own. But let's just say, for argument's sake, it was true. Let's give Joe Biden and the left the argument that what Joe Biden is saying is true. So here's my question for Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, anyone on the left that feels Joe Biden has been completely honest and accurate in saying he was bound by the agreement by Donald Trump to leave Afghanistan, and we had to leave Afghanistan. Here's the question I have. If that agreement had not been in place, would you have still left Afghanistan? The answer is yes. Yes, he would. So Joe Biden cannot blame Donald Trump for an agreement to leave Afghanistan when Joe Biden fully intended on leaving Afghanistan. He talks about it like, hey, I had no choice, nothing I could do. It was either stay and put more troops in and keep fighting, or leave. And because of this agreement, I had no choice. We had to leave. But no, Joe Biden wanted to leave Afghanistan back in 2014. I played those clips for you. When the combat mission ended in 2014, when Joe Biden was vice president, he felt it was time to leave Afghanistan. For whatever reason, the Obama administration couldn't put it together and make it happen. But when Joe Biden became president, his intention was to leave Afghanistan. There was never an option on the table for him to stay, to put more troops in, to continue fighting. So that's the question for a reporter. The next time they ask Joe Biden a question and he responds by saying, I was bound by my predecessor to leave, ask him, well, if the deal wasn't made by Trump, what would you have done then? Would you have cut a similar deal? Would you have cut a different deal? And if Joe Biden answers yes, well, you got him. Because why didn't you? Because you could have. You could have cut a different deal. And here's where I really get upset. I'm going off on a tangent. Oh, boy, I may end up talking about Afghanistan longer than I wanted to, but hang in there with me. Here's the other thing that upsets me, Joe Biden. You could have cut a deal with the Taliban. The Taliban seemed to be in a deal-making position, or should I say in a deal-making mood. They made a deal with the Trump administration. You're telling me you couldn't make a deal with the Taliban, and the Trump administration, who couldn't find their butt with both hands, could make a deal with the Taliban? Of course you could. But you had to go into it a little good cop, bad cop. That's the problem. I'm going back to it, people. The tone, how you approach the situation. You go into it a little good cop, bad cop. You send your diplomats over, you send your negotiators over, and they good cop the Taliban. They say, listen, we know you got a deal with Trump. You made a deal with the Trump administration. That deal just isn't going to fly. It's not going to happen. Listen, Biden, he's sick of this whole war. He just wants to level this whole country. That's what he wants to do. He just wants to level the whole country and just be done with it. Now, we're trying to talk him out of it, but every time we sit him down in the Situation Room and discuss Afghanistan, he just wants to eat crackers. So you're going to have to figure something out that we can go back to this guy and make him happy, because there's no telling what he's going to do. Now, I can hear you out there saying it. I know this works better with a guy like Trump than it works with a guy like Biden, because Biden is predictable as the sunset. But let's just pretend for a moment that he's not. Now, while the diplomats are in Afghanistan negotiating, Biden says in an interview, yeah, I'm going to be sending 2 carrier strike groups to the area. And we're also going to be sending a couple hundred Black Hawk helicopters to Bagram Air Base. This is what he says in an interview. Just matter-of-factly. Doesn't make a big deal out of it. The media reports it. Oh, holy smokes. 2 carrier strike groups headed to the Afghanistan area. 200 Black Hawk helicopters heading to Bagram Air Base. The Taliban has the internet. The Taliban watches CNN. Don't think they don't. Now, Biden has no intention of really sending carriers. He has no intention of really sending 200 Black Hawk helicopters. Biden wants to essentially negotiate the same exact deal that Donald Trump did. But, again, let's assume Biden hasn't been so horrible on his tone, and the Taliban doesn't know that. Now you say, here's the deal we want. Those 5,000 prisoners, you can't just let them out. Trump negotiated that. We don't know what he was thinking when he negotiated that, but those 5,000 prisoners, they cannot be let out. We need to vet those people before they can be let out. That's number one. Number two, we have several thousand people that we want to evacuate from this country, and we're going to need anywhere between 6 to 8 months to do it. Number three, you have to stay out of the city limits of Kabul until we're gone. That's it. Everything else that Trump negotiated, we're fine with that. No changes to any of that. Those are the changes we want to make to the deal. Guess what's being reported right now in the media? The Taliban is saying one of the biggest mistakes we made, meaning the Taliban made, was letting those 5,000 people out of prison. That's what the Taliban is saying. The Taliban is saying, yeah, we didn't want some of those people let out of that prison. Some of those people are our enemy. So they actually would have preferred all of those people not getting let out of prison. Now, whether or not they would agree to a vetting, again, we don't care. We don't care. Anything that slows down the process of the Taliban taking over Afghanistan and allows us to evacuate our people, because that's what we're really doing. We're stalling and evacuating our people while we're stalling, Joe Biden. You got to play a little cat and mouse. It's unfortunate because I think this is what Trump supporters thought that Donald Trump would be like as president. I think this is what Trump supporters thought Donald Trump would be doing. Listen to this. These are clips from a speech that Donald Trump gave back in 2017, shortly after he became president. It was a speech he gave to lay out his strategy on Afghanistan. Now, liberals, you're not going to like some of what you hear here. But it's best you hear it from me, because there are some conservatives that I've already heard, some conservative shows that are playing these clips, and some of them they're even altering, if you can believe that. But it does present Donald Trump in a good light. So you're going to want to hear this from me in the context from me. But this is what Donald Trump sounded like in the beginning of his administration. And let's be clear. He's struggling with this teleprompter. Someone wrote him a good speech. He's struggling to muddle through it and read it. It's not his thoughts. It's not his ideas. I get that. But it was the strategy that he laid out that someone wrote out for him, that someone came up for him. Let's listen to the clips.
No one denies that we have inherited a challenging and troubling situation in Afghanistan and South Asia, but we do not have the luxury of going back in time and making different or better decisions. When I became president, I was given a bad and very complex hand, but I fully knew what I was getting into, big and intricate problems. But one way or another, these problems will be solved. I'm a problem solver. That nearly 16 years after September 11th attacks, after the extraordinary sacrifice of blood and treasure, the American people are weary of war without victory. Nowhere is this more evident than with the war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history, 17 years. That is why, shortly after my inauguration, I directed Secretary of Defense Mattis and my national security team to undertake a comprehensive review of all strategic options in Afghanistan and South Asia. My original instinct was to pull out, but all my life I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. In other words, when you're president of the United States. So I studied Afghanistan in great detail and from every conceivable angle.
I'm sorry. I fell out of my chair. What did he just say? He studied from every piece of...
In Afghanistan and Pakistan, America's interests are clear. We must stop the resurgence of safe havens that enable terrorists to threaten America. And we must prevent nuclear weapons and materials from coming into the hands of terrorists and being used against us or anywhere in the world, for that matter. The government of Afghanistan must carry their share of the military, political, and economic burden. The American people expect to see real reforms, real progress, and real results. Our patience is not unlimited. We will keep our eyes wide open. In abiding by the oath I took on January 20th, I will remain steadfast in protecting American lives and American interests.
But it turned out Donald Trump, the only deal point he ever needed in a negotiation is what's in it for me. What do I get out of it? Donald Trump never cared about what America would get out of a deal he made, only what Donald Trump would get out of a deal that he made. Ooh, I'm turning back on Donald Trump now. I've been hitting Biden hard. It's about time I got back to hitting Trump hard. You don't believe me, Trump supporters? Think about it. Think about the things that you've heard Donald Trump say out loud. Donald Trump, when questioned about when he got caught after lying, questioned about doing business in Russia. What did he say? Of course I do business in Russia. I'm a businessman. Now, Donald Trump would tell you that Russia's a great enemy of ours. The Republicans would tell you, Fox News would tell you, that Russia is a great enemy of ours, not friendly to America in the least. But Donald Trump said, sure, I'll do business there. I'm a businessman. I don't care about Russia being an enemy of America. When Donald Trump was questioned about giving money to Hillary Clinton, what did he say? He said, of course I gave money to Hillary Clinton. I give money to everybody. I'm a businessman. Now, the Clintons are supposed to be the worst thing that could happen to America is a Clinton being in office, whether president, whether senator. But Donald Trump donated money to Hillary Clinton to help her get into office because he was a businessman, even if it was supposed to be bad for America. When Donald Trump was questioned about having products, his ties made in China, manufactured in China, what did Donald Trump say? I'm a businessman. Of course I have my products made in China. It's cheaper. It's better for business. I'm a businessman. Screw America and whether it hurts America in trade. So does that sound like a patriot to you? Does that sound like Donald Trump who negotiates deals in favor of America and not in favor of Donald Trump? So Donald Trump negotiated a horrible deal. Joe Biden had no obligation to stick to it. If anything, he had an obligation to renegotiate the deal, and he didn't. I don't like the dishonesty, Joe. I don't like the double talk. I don't like you standing up there and talking about 20 years in Afghanistan as if you weren't vice president for 8 years and a U.S. senator for, 150 years? As if you had nothing to do with any of the policy over those 20 years in Afghanistan? I played the clip for you last week. I'm not going to play it again. Wait, yes, I am.
He needs is security. The second is a plan which is underway to rebuild a military and a police force and an infusion of economic assistance just to do the basic things, like put in fax machines, telephones, desk, paper, the things that are the necessary tools of governance in the most basic of ways. History is going to judge us very harshly, I believe, if we allow the hope of a liberated Afghanistan to evaporate because we are fearful of the phrase nation building or we do not stay the course.
He was talking about buying them copy paper, fax machines. That was nation building. He said it. You heard him right there. We can't be fearful of nation building. Now he's saying it was never about nation building. Joe, It's not necessary to lie. Stop doing it. Tell the truth. Here's the honest to goodness truth. 4 administrations screwed up on policy on Afghanistan. The Bush administration screwed up when they took their eyes off the ball in Afghanistan and went into Iraq. The Obama-Biden administration screwed up when it came about nation building instead of just getting Osama bin Laden. The Trump administration screwed up when they cut a horrible deal with the Taliban because they're terrorists and we don't negotiate with terrorists. And the Biden administration screwed up when they stuck to that deal. Everyone screwed up. Everyone's to blame. But through all that, through all the screw-ups, our military still did an incredible job. And our military did not lose a war in Afghanistan. That's the last point I'll make on Afghanistan, the one that bothers me the most. I actually heard a commentator on TV just come right out and say it, like she wasn't saying anything at all. The Taliban won. The Taliban won. Well, the Taliban really didn't win. America walked away from the fight. And that's okay. I'm all right with that. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. America walked away from the fight because America has made a decision that while we could win the war in Afghanistan, what we would have to do, the number of lives that would be lost to win that war, not just on the American side, but innocent Afghani lives, it's not worth the cost. What do we get after we win the war in Afghanistan that America could win if we used the weapons we have at our disposal, if we threw our full military might behind a war in Afghanistan? What would we win? Bragging rights to say we beat the Taliban? That's it, not much more. And so the decision is made, no, we're not going to throw all of our military might behind a war in Afghanistan. We're not going to use the horrible weapons of mass destruction that we have to say we won a war in Afghanistan. We're not going to kill hundreds of thousands of civilians to say we won a war in Afghanistan. But we could. We could. And we could say we won. So it's not like we lost. We just chose not to do what we would need to do to win. Listen, that's my way of looking at it. Now, if you think that's just me not wanting to concede to some sort of defeat, that's fine. You see it your way, I'll see it mine. But the last thing I'm going to say on Afghanistan, on Afghanistan, if I keep hearing people say to me, we had to get out, again, an argument no one's having, we had to get out, we spent $2 trillion, we've lost X amount of lives, we had to get out. It's over 20 years, it's too long, it was a war that couldn't be won, it had to end at some point. Well, let's end the war on poverty. How many trillions of dollars over the decades have we dumped into trying to end the war on poverty? It's an unwinnable war. I don't think you can ever completely eradicate poverty, so let's end that war. Let's stop spending those tax dollars. While we're at it, let's end the war on terrorism. We are still fighting the war on terrorism, aren't we? Let's end that war. It's an unwinnable war. We're spending trillions of dollars on that war. We're losing lives in that war. Let's end it. It can't be won. When you take out one terrorist organization, another terrorist organization pops up right behind it. Let's end the war on drugs. How many trillions of dollars have we spent on the war on drugs over the decades? And where has it gotten us? Where's it gotten us? It's an unwinnable war. Thousands of lives lost. Law enforcement lives. Lives of people in communities. When gang violence takes place and innocent people are hit by stray bullets or people are gunned down in the streets, it's because of some drug war. It's because of some war over territory for drugs. So let's legalize all the drugs and let's end the war on drugs. It's not winnable. So stop talking about how much money has been spent. Stop talking about how many lives have been lost. It's tragic. Anytime, any life is lost in our military, whether it's during training, in an accident, whether it's by suicide, or whether it's in combat. But for Joe Biden to say there's no national interest in Afghanistan, aside from the fact that Pakistan has nuclear weapons and is right next door, and I don't know if anybody can tell me whether Pakistan is an ally or not. I mean, after all, that is where Osama bin Laden was hiding. But I digress. When Joe Biden says there's no national interest in us in Afghanistan, no interest in potentially negotiating a deal where we keep 2,500 troops out in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, you know what the national interest is? Our standing in the world. That's the national interest for us in Afghanistan, and us exiting Afghanistan in a way that doesn't make us look like drunks stumbling out of a bar at last call, exiting in some kind of a way that makes us look like the superpower that we're supposed to be. That's the national interest for America. The way America is viewed on the world stage. How do you think America's being viewed on the world stage right now? Not very favorably. And that's important. That goes to the national interest of America, how we're viewed. I'm going back to my Mike Tyson analogy. For those of you who listened a couple of shows ago, I said our military is like the Mike Tyson of the world, meaning you'd be crazy to screw with us. That's how we're supposed to be. That's how we're supposed to be seen. Our military is supposed to be seen. The Mike Tyson of militaries. You'd be crazy to screw with us. I'll give you another analogy, another Mike Tyson analogy. It was said that Mike Tyson used to win fights before he ever threw a punch. Mike Tyson's presence was so intimidating, just walking in the ring, standing in the ring. His opponent would look across at him and be so intimidated, Mike Tyson would win the fight before he ever threw the punch. That's our national interest, Joe. I don't feel very intimidating as an American right now. I don't know that China is intimidated by us right now. I don't know that any of our enemies, any terrorist organizations, are intimidated by us right now. That's in our national interest. Now, here's the last thing I'll say about Afghanistan. Really, the last thing I'm going to say about Afghanistan. I'm going to thank my listeners for your comments on Twitter. I really appreciate it because it makes me think. I have people who comment to me that the show makes them think. They appreciate that. They don't agree with what I say, but it causes them to think. And your comments also cause me to think because I'm so convinced that what I'm saying makes sense. When someone disagrees with me, it makes me think, am I missing something? And I was missing something in my criticism of Joe Biden. So now that I've spent the last 25 minutes or so criticizing Joe Biden, I'm going to defend Joe Biden. And I'm going to defend Joe Biden by saying, I recognize through one of the particular comments I got on Twitter, presidents are faced with bad decisions and worse decisions. Mr. President, here are your options. Some are bad and some are worse. What do you want to go with? And you assume they'll always say, well, I guess I got to go with the bad decision. Who the heck would go with the worst decision? But what ends up happening is maybe the bad decision turns out to be the worst decision. But how could you possibly know that? There's no way Biden could possibly predict and know what was going to unfold in Afghanistan. When he made the bad decision instead of what was potentially the worst decision, and then the worst decision became the bad decision, and the bad decision became the worst decision, that's what presidents have to deal with. George W. Bush said a lot of wacky things, but one of the things that he said that I remembered that I felt was pretty intelligent, it was simple, but it was pretty intelligent. George W. Bush said, when you're president, when you make a decision, whether you make a decision to do something or to not do something, if it goes bad, you made the wrong decision. It doesn't matter. The decision doesn't matter at all. The outcome is what matters. You make the best decision you can make. Do it, don't do it, doesn't matter. The outcome is what matters. And you can't control the outcome. You can control your decision, but you can't control the outcome all the time. So sure, are there things I wish Biden had done differently? Do I think there are things Biden could have done better? Just about everyone's saying that, including people who are strongly in Biden's quarter. I heard Samantha Bee, saw her show, caught just a little clip of her show the other night, Samantha Bee. She's a heavy-duty liberal, and she was criticizing Biden for what unfolded in Afghanistan. So it's okay to criticize Joe Biden, at the same time recognizing he has no control over how things unfolded. And you can say that for any president. So for the conservatives who want to call on Biden to resign, who want Biden brought up on war crimes, who are using the hashtag Biden lied, people died, weren't you using that hashtag for Fauci? Weren't you using the Fauci lied, people died, you can just switch that hashtag up like that? You don't care? Whatever. If you want to criticize Biden, but at least be consistent. Here on the comparison group, I asked people to be consistent. I heard a lot of people on conservative media complaining about these Afghan refugees coming to America. Tucker Carlson said they're coming to America, probably to a neighborhood near you. And then, when things started to fall apart, the conservative media starts hammering Joe Biden for not getting the Afghan refugees out, for not getting the people out that helped America. So be consistent, at least in your criticism. Now, this is the last thing I'm going to say on Afghanistan. No, I'm kidding. I'm done. I'm done with Afghanistan. I'm going to leave you with a little analogy because it has been very interesting watching the flip-flopping back and forth on conservative media, criticizing Biden over letting refugees into America, then criticizing him over not getting the refugees out, watching left-leaning media kind of go along with the narrative, fight the argument that we had to get out of Afghanistan even though no one was fighting the argument. It's been interesting to kind of see left-leaning people behave kind of like right-leaning people behaved when Donald Trump was president, wanting to blame the media for not reporting on Afghanistan in a good enough way, or watching Joe Biden blaming his predecessor for the issues that were going on in Afghanistan, or watching Joe Biden, when asked whether he would have done anything differently, saying, no, I don't think I could have done anything differently. That's the equivalent to Donald Trump giving himself an A+ on handling of COVID. So it's been interesting to watch the role reversal amongst the left and the right. And so I think about it and I see it this way. The left and the right behave the way they do for the reason that someone may behave in a bar. If you're in a bar, you're sitting at the bar by yourself, having a drink, and the most attractive woman in the world, if you're a guy, the most attractive woman in the world, or a girl, I guess, sits down right next to you. And she is hot. I mean, she's Annette Funicello hot. She's incredible. Just gorgeous. She sits down next to you, and you offer to buy her a drink. And you strike up a conversation. She tells you she's in town, working with a charity, she's single, she loves dogs, sports, and giving blowjobs. Whoa! The 3 things you love. So you sit and you have a wonderful conversation with this young lady. She's charming and she's intelligent. She's engaging. She's drop dead gorgeous. She's everything that you want in a woman. And so the night is coming to an end and she says, hey, what do you think about you taking me back to your place? And you say, whoa, I can't believe my incredible luck. I think I have just met the woman of my dreams. And you say, absolutely, I would love to take you back to my place. And she then says, awesome, but I'll just have to get up and leave early because I have to go get a COVID test in the morning because I've been running a fever of 103. I've been coughing. I have a sore throat and I ate a bat at a wet market in China about a week ago. Now, you've just met the woman of your dreams. You've invested about 8 drinks worth of bar equity into this woman. So what do? I'll tell you what you do. You double mask and you take her home. And do you know why? Do you know why we do that? Because we think this opportunity will never come along again. We've been conditioned to think every moment that we're living in, every situation that's unfolding in front of us is the most important one in our lives. Carpe diem. Live every day like it's your last. What if it's not? What if you live to be 110? If you listen to this show, you're probably A, pretty smart, and B, probably follow the media and politics. And if you do, typically people who fall into that category have pretty strong, definite, unshakable opinions. And you feel like every moment that we're in that's being covered in the media is the most important moment, is an opportunity that you can't let slip away, is an opportunity that's not going to come around again. How many times am I going to hear the media describe something as historic? Do you notice everything is historic now? There are some things that are historic. We had historic rainfall in the Northeast, but Donald Trump giving a speech in front of Congress was not historic, but it was described as historic by the media. The first time Donald Trump addressed Congress, it was described as a historic speech. Why? Because it was the first businessman elected president to give a speech in front. That's not historic. but because the media told you it was historic, there were probably a lot of Trump supporters who felt like this opportunity I will never see it again in my lifetime. I have to defend Donald Trump as if I was defending my own child. Donald Trump is not your Annette Funicello. Joe Biden is not your Annette Funicello. There are a couple of guys with a lot of flaws that are going to make a lot of mistakes, or that did make a lot of mistakes. And when they do, we have to recognize it and be willing to figuratively walk away, not put our lives at risk, not put friendships at risk because we don't want to give in on an argument and walk away. Put our relationship with family members at risk because we don't want to give in an argument and just walk away. But we don't. We're conditioned. My side versus your side. I'm going to ignore the flaws. I'm going to take Annette Funicello home. I'm going to spend the night with her, and I'm going to wake up the next day with a sore throat. But maybe you get lucky, and she just had smallpox. Thanks for listening. Much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed the show. Next show, I'm determined to do the show that I wanted to do 2 shows ago. I want to talk about the infrastructure bill, the reconciliation bill. Does anyone know what a reconciliation bill is? I'll explain best as I can. I want to talk about the John Lewis voting rights bill. I want to talk about a lot of things that Democrats are working on in Congress. Maybe I'll talk a little about Texas, how they're trying to restrict the right to vote, is what I'm being told. Trying to restrict some other things in Texas, I see. You're a very interesting state, Texas. I'll give you that. So keep listening. I will have some other interesting information to share with you that I won't share right now. But I think you'll find it interesting. Tickle your butt with a feather there a little bit. www.thecomparisongroup.com to find other episodes, sources, and fact checks. Follow me on Twitter at @comparison_show. @comparison_show. You can find the show on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. Please subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. All you got to do is download the app, iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is, subscribe to the show, leave me a comment telling me how awesome I am, and that's it. You're telling me you can't do that? What's the use? Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.